The crystal halls of the Galactic Tribunal gleamed with an otherworldly light, casting prismatic rainbows across the faces of the assembled judges. Marcus Vale stood in the defendant's circle, his hands bound with energy shackles that hummed with alien technology. The weight of 1,000 stares pressed down upon him from the gallery above, where representatives from dozens of worlds had gathered to witness what many considered a foregone conclusion. "The human will speak now," announced High Arbiter ZYX Thul, his voice resonating through the chamber with the authority of millennia. The crystalline being's form shifted and sparkled as he spoke, each word accompanied by musical chimes that seemed to mock the gravity of the moment. Marcus lifted his chin, meeting the alien's multifaceted gaze without flinching. 3 months in Zephyrian custody had not broken his spirit, though it had taught him much about the galaxy's opinion of humanity. "I maintain my innocence, honored Arbiter. The charges of espionage are fabricated." A ripple of what might have been laughter echoed through the chamber. Arbiter Velnara, a towering figure with gossamer wings and eyes like liquid mercury, leaned forward with obvious disdain. "Fabricated? The evidence is overwhelming, human. Your primitive species thinks deception is an art form." "Earth's legal system," interjected Arbiter Kethmore, his voice like grinding stone, "operates on the barbaric principle of innocent until proven guilty." How quaint. Here in civilized space, we recognize patterns of behavior. Humans lie. Humans steal. Humans betray trust. Marcus felt his jaw clench, but forced himself to remain calm. He had studied xenolinguistics for 15 years, had dedicated his life to building bridges between species, and now stood accused of the very betrayal he had worked to prevent. The irony was not lost on him. "If I may address the tribunal," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "I came to Nexus Prime as part of the Cultural Exchange Program. My research focused on linguistic patterns that could improve interspecies communication. The files I accessed were publicly available academic resources." Arbiter ZYX Thul's form pulsed with what Marcus had learned to recognize as amusement. Public resources that happened to contain classified military communication codes. A remarkable coincidence. "I had no knowledge of any military applications," Marcus insisted. "The linguistic matrices I studied were purely theoretical." From the prosecution bench, a figure rose with fluid grace. Celeste Vex moved like liquid starlight, her Zephyrian heritage evident in the way her silver hair seemed to float around her shoulders and her skin held an inner luminescence. She wore the deep blue robes of a legal advocate, the fabric shimmering with embedded light fibers that marked her high rank within the tribunal system. "The defendant's protestations of innocence are touching," Celeste said, her voice carrying a melodic quality that made even her accusations sound like poetry. "However, the evidence speaks louder than words." Data packets containing military encryption keys were found in his personal files. The transmission logs show clearly that this information was being prepared for transfer to Earth authorities. Marcus watched her as she spoke, struck by the contradiction between her ethereal beauty and the cold precision of her words. There was something in her expression, a flicker of uncertainty that vanished almost before he could register it. For just a moment, their eyes met across the chamber, and he saw something unexpected there, not triumph, but regret. "The prosecution has presented its case admirably," High Arbiter ZYX Thul declared. "The evidence is clear, the defendant's guilt established beyond reasonable doubt. We find Marcus Vale guilty of xenological espionage against the Galactic Federation." The chamber erupted in sounds of approval from the alien spectators. Marcus felt the world tilt around him as the weight of the verdict settled over his shoulders. 15 years of study, of dreams of bringing species together, destroyed in a matter of minutes by a trial that had been decided before it began. However, the High Arbiter continued, raising a crystalline appendage for silence, "We are not without mercy. Rather than the standard penalty of molecular dissolution, the tribunal sentences the defendant to lifelong neural restructuring. His memories of human civilization will be extracted and studied, while his mind is rebuilt to serve the Federation's research needs." The blood drained from Marcus's face. Neural restructuring was considered by many to be a fate worse than death, the complete erasure of personality and identity, leaving behind only a shell program to serve alien interests. "Wait," Marcus called out, his voice cutting through the chamber's din, "I invoke the right of Valenthal." Silence fell like a hammer blow. The three arbiters exchanged glances that spoke of surprise and, perhaps, annoyance. Celeste Vex had gone perfectly still, her luminous eyes fixed on Marcus with an expression he couldn't read. "The right of Valenthal?" High Arbiter Zwaxthal's voice carried notes of disbelief. "You dare invoke ancient combat law?" "I do," Marcus replied firmly. "By the oldest codes of galactic justice, any sentient being facing dissolution or neural restructuring may demand trial by combat. It is my right by law, regardless of species." Arbiter Velnara's wings fluttered with agitation. "The human knows our laws." "Impossible. This is some trick." "I am a xenolinguist," Marcus reminded them. "I have studied the legal codes of 17 civilizations. The right of Valenthal is enshrined in the Galactic Charter, Article 7, Section 12. It cannot be denied to any sentient being." The arbiters huddled together, their forms creating a symphony of light and sound as they conferred in rapid, musical tones. Finally, High Arbiter Zwaxthal straightened to his full impressive height. "The right is acknowledged," he announced, though his tone suggested he found the entire situation distasteful. "Marcus Vale, you have invoked trial by combat. You will face a champion chosen by this tribunal. Victory will grant you freedom and vindication. Defeat will result in immediate dissolution. Do you understand these terms?" "I do," Marcus replied, though his heart hammered against his ribs. He had bought himself time, but at what cost? He was a scholar, not a warrior. Whatever champion the tribunal chose would likely kill him within minutes. As the session adjourned and guards moved to escort him back to his cell, Marcus caught sight of Celeste Vex gathering her documents. For just a moment, she looked directly at him, and this time there was no mistaking the emotion in her luminous eyes. It was concern, tinged with something that might have been admiration. The last thing Marcus heard as the chamber doors closed behind him was the sound of alien voices raised in animated discussion. Word of a human invoking ancient combat rights would spread quickly through the galaxy. He had gambled everything on a single desperate move, and now he would face the consequences under the light of alien stars. In his cell that night, staring up at the triple moons of Nexus Prime through his small window, Marcus wondered if he had just chosen a more dramatic way to die. But at least he would face his end as himself, not as some neurally restructured shadow. That, he told himself, was worth something. What he didn't know was that in her private chambers across the city, Celeste Vex was staring at the same moons, her heart torn between duty and an emotion she had never expected to feel for a human defendant. Celeste Vex stood before the mirror in her private chambers, her reflection wavering like disturbed water in the polished crystal surface. The events of the day had left her feeling strangely hollow, despite what should have been a moment of professional triumph. She had successfully prosecuted a human spy, secured his conviction, and upheld the Federation's interests. So why did victory taste like ash in her mouth? The soft chime of her door announced a visitor. "Enter," she called, composing herself as her assistant, Nixandra, glided into the room with characteristic efficiency. "The tribunal requests your presence in the morning briefing," Nixandra informed her, her crystalline features reflecting the chamber's ambient light. "They wish to discuss the humans' unexpected invocation." Celeste nodded absently. "Has a champion been selected?" "The Krillian gladiator Vorthak has accepted the challenge. The combat is scheduled for 3 days hence, under the full moons as tradition demands." Nixandra paused, studying her superior with curious eyes. "If I may ask, Advocate Vex, you seem troubled by today's outcome. Surely the human's desperate gambit changes nothing?" "Nothing at all," Celeste replied too quickly. "His guilt remains unchanged, regardless of how he chooses to meet his fate." But as Nixandra departed, Celeste found herself drawn to her personal files, scrolling through the evidence that had sealed Marcus Vale's conviction. The data was compelling, almost too perfect in its clarity. Military encryption keys embedded in linguistic research files, transmission logs showing attempted contact with Earth authorities. It painted a clear picture of espionage. Yet something nagged at her. In her years as a legal advocate, Celeste had developed an instinct for deception, and Marcus Vale didn't feel like a spy. His responses during questioning had carried the ring of truth, his confusion and hurt seemingly genuine. More troubling still was the way he had looked at her during the trial, not with hatred or fear, but with something approaching understanding, as if he saw past her role to the person beneath. Sleep eluded her that night. Instead, Celeste found herself walking the moonlit gardens of the judicial complex, seeking clarity among the bioluminescent flowers that bloomed only under starlight. The path led her, perhaps inevitably, toward the detention block where Marcus awaited his fate. The guard station was empty, a minor security lapse she would normally report, but tonight she was grateful for the oversight. The detention cells were designed for transparency, their energy barriers providing a clear view of the occupants while preventing physical contact. Marcus sat on his narrow cot, staring up at the moons through his cell's single window. "You couldn't sleep either," his voice carried clearly through the barrier's audio transmitters. Celeste started, not realizing she had been visible in the corridor's shadows. For a moment, she considered leaving without responding, maintaining the professional distance between prosecutor and defendant. Instead, she found herself stepping into the light. "I wanted to understand," she said quietly, "why a guilty man would choose almost certain death over neural restructuring." Marcus turned to face her, and even through the energy barrier, she could see the intelligence in his dark eyes. "Because I'm not guilty, and even if I die tomorrow, at least I'll die as myself. The evidence against you is overwhelming." "Is it?" Marcus rose from his cot, moving closer to the barrier. "Tell me, Advocate Vex, in all your years of prosecution, have you ever seen a case where the evidence was quite so convenient?" Despite herself, Celeste felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" "I mean that whoever framed me was very thorough, but not quite thorough enough. The linguistic matrices I was studying, they're not just random academic resources. They're part of a specific research project I've been working on for 3 years, trying to develop universal translation protocols. Someone knew exactly what I was accessing and prepared false evidence accordingly." Celeste's luminous skin dimmed slightly, a sign of distress among her people. "You're suggesting a conspiracy?" "I'm suggesting that someone wanted me discredited, wanted the cultural exchange program to fail. What better way than to prove that humans can't be trusted with sensitive information?" Marcus's voice carried conviction that was hard to dismiss. "The question is, who benefits from destroying humans' Ephirian cooperation?" The answer came to Celeste with sudden, terrible clarity. The purest faction within the Zephyrian government had been vocal opponents of the exchange program from its inception. They viewed other species as inferior, potential contaminants of Zephyrian genetic purity. If they could prove that humans were untrustworthy. "You're thinking the same thing I am," Marcus observed, watching her expression. "Someone set me up to fail." Celeste found herself studying his face with new interest. The angular jaw spoke of determination, but it was his eyes that held her attention, dark, intelligent, and completely without guile. How had she missed it during the trial? This was not the face of a deceiver. "Even if what you say is true," she said carefully, "the tribunal has ruled. The combat will proceed. And I'll likely die," Marcus replied matter-of-factly. "Vorthak has killed 17 opponents in sanctioned combat. I'm a scholar who knows 3 forms of martial arts and has excellent reflexes. The mathematics aren't encouraging." Something twisted in Celeste's chest at his casual acceptance of death. "You don't seem afraid." Marcus smiled, and the expression transformed his face entirely. "I am afraid. Terrified, actually. But I've spent my life studying the connections between species, looking for the common threads that bind us together despite our differences. If I'm going to die, at least it will be in service of something I believe in." "And what do you believe in?" "That barriers between species are artificial constructs. That understanding can overcome prejudice. That love, in all its forms, is the universal constant that makes life worth living. His gaze held hers steadily. I've seen it in your eyes, Advocate Vex. You feel it too. Celeste's breath caught. The connection she had been trying to deny suddenly blazed between them like a star being born. I don't know what you mean. You defended me brilliantly during the trial, but your heart wasn't in it. You spoke the words your position required, but your eyes told a different story. You know I'm innocent. The truth of his words hit her like a physical blow. She did know, had known from the moment she first interviewed him weeks ago. The evidence was damning, but the man was not. Yet she had proceeded with the prosecution anyway, bound by duty and afraid to trust her instincts. I am a legal advocate of the Galactic Tribunal, she said, though the words felt hollow. My personal feelings are irrelevant. Are they? Marcus moved closer to the barrier, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. What if I told you that in the 3 months I've been imprisoned, the only moments of hope I've felt have been when you looked at me with those luminous eyes of yours? What if I told you that even facing death, I consider myself fortunate to have met someone who sees the universe the way you do? Celeste's hands trembled as she pressed them against the cool surface of the energy barrier. You don't know me. I know you're brilliant, the way you constructed your case was masterful, even if I was innocent. I know you're conflicted about your role in this trial. And I know you care about justice more than politics, or you wouldn't be here now, questioning a convicted spy in the middle of the night. The space between them seemed to crackle with possibility. Celeste found herself imagining what it would be like to touch his face, to feel the warmth of human skin beneath her fingers. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. This is impossible, she whispered. You're human. I'm Zephyrian. Even if you weren't facing execution. Love doesn't recognize species barriers, Marcus said softly. It's the one force in the universe that transcends biology. Love. The word hung between them like a challenge. Celeste felt something deep within her respond to it, a yearning she had never acknowledged. All her life, she had focused on her career, on serving the law with precision and dedication. She had never allowed herself to consider that there might be something more important than professional success. I should go, she said, though she made no move to leave. Will you do something for me? Marcus asked. Win or lose tomorrow, will you investigate the evidence against me? Not as my prosecutor, but as someone who cares about truth. The request was simple, but its implications were staggering. If she found proof of his innocence after his death, it would destroy her career and possibly her life. The purist faction did not forgive those who opposed them. I cannot promise anything, she said finally. I'm not asking for promises. I'm asking you to trust your instincts the way I'm trusting mine. Celeste looked into his eyes one last time, memorizing every detail of his face. Tomorrow he would likely die, and she would lose something she had only just discovered she wanted. The injustice of it burned in her chest like acid. Goodbye, Marcus Vale, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Not goodbye, he replied. Until we meet again, in this life or the next. As she walked away, Celeste felt tears flowing down her cheeks for the first time in decades. By the time she reached her chambers, her decision was made. She would investigate, would dig deeper into the evidence that had condemned an innocent man. And if she found what she suspected she would find, she would act, regardless of the consequences. Love, she was learning, was indeed a force that transcended barriers. Even the barrier between duty and truth. The training grounds beneath the judicial complex reeked of sweat, blood, and determination. Marcus Vale stood in the center of the circular arena, his human frame dwarfed by the massive figure circling him with predatory grace. Thorn Blackwood was not what Marcus had expected when the tribunal assigned him a combat trainer. Standing nearly 7 feet tall with skin like burnished bronze and intricate tattoos covering his muscled arms, Thorn moved with the fluid precision of a born warrior. His people, the Valorians, were renowned throughout the galaxy as fierce fighters, and Thorn had earned his reputation in the gladiatorial pits of a dozen worlds before retiring to train others. Again, Thorn commanded, his voice a deep rumble that seemed to emanate from his chest. Your opponent will not wait for you to find your balance. Marcus wiped sweat from his eyes and raised his practice weapon, a weighted staff similar to what he would face in actual combat. For the past 2 days, Thorn had pushed him relentlessly, teaching him techniques that might keep him alive for more than 30 seconds against Vorthak. You fight like a scholar, Thorn observed, easily deflecting Marcus's attack and sending him sprawling with a casual sweep of his leg. All technique, no passion. In the arena, passion is what separates the living from the dead. Marcus picked himself up, frustration burning in his chest. I am a scholar. I study languages, not warfare. Then why did you choose combat over neural restructuring? Thorn asked, genuine curiosity in his golden eyes. A scholar would normally choose preservation of knowledge over physical risk. The question gave Marcus pause. He had asked himself the same thing countless times over the past few days. Because some things are worth dying for. My innocence. My identity. The truth. Thorn's expression shifted, something like respect flickering across his scarred features. Now you begin to understand. Combat is not about strength or skill alone, it is about what you are willing to sacrifice for what you believe. Tell me, human, is there anything else worth dying for? An image flashed through Marcus's mind, luminous eyes and silver hair, a voice like starlight given sound. Celeste Vex had visited him once more since their midnight conversation, bringing news that she was investigating irregularities in his case. The hope in her eyes had been almost painful to witness. Love, Marcus said quietly. Love is worth dying for. Thorn's laughter boomed through the training chamber. Ah, now we reach the heart of it. You have found something precious among the stars, haven't you, scholar? It doesn't matter, Marcus replied, raising his weapon again. After tomorrow, it will all be academic. Will it? Thorn's staff whistled through the air, forcing Marcus to dodge frantically. The Krillian champion is strong, yes, and experienced. But he fights for coin and glory. You fight for love and truth. Which do you think burns brighter? The next few hours passed in a blur of combat drills and tactical discussions. Thorn taught Marcus to use his smaller size and agility against Vorthak's brute strength, to turn the Krillian's aggression against him. But more importantly, he taught Marcus to find the warrior's heart that beat within the scholar's chest. Remember, Thorn said as they concluded their final session, in combat, the mind that hesitates is lost. Trust your instincts, fight with purpose, and do not go gentle into that dark night. As the triple moons rose over Nexus Prime, the great arena filled with spectators from across the galaxy. The combat would be broadcast to 100 worlds, making Marcus's struggle a symbol that would resonate far beyond his personal fate. In the VIP section, he could see the crystalline forms of the Tribunal members, their faceted surfaces catching and reflecting the arena's lights. Marcus stood in the preparation chamber, donning the ceremonial armor that tradition demanded. The metal was lightweight but strong, designed to protect vital organs while allowing maximum mobility. In his hands, he held the weapon he had chosen, a staff tipped with crystalline points, similar to what he had trained with but deadly sharp. A soft chime announced a visitor. Marcus turned, expecting to see Thorn offering final words of encouragement. Instead, Celeste Vex stood in the doorway, her luminous form seeming to glow in the chamber's dim light. I came to wish you luck, she said, though her voice carried a tremor that spoke of deeper emotions. Did you find anything? Marcus asked, referring to her investigation of his case. Celeste's expression darkened. Irregularities in the data timestamps. Unauthorized access to the court's evidence files. Someone with high-level clearance has been manipulating records. She paused, her luminous eyes meeting his. You were right, Marcus. You've been framed. The confirmation of his innocence should have brought satisfaction, but Marcus felt only a hollow ache. Will it make any difference? Not unless you survive to see justice done. Celeste moved closer, her hand almost touching the energy barrier that separated them. I've submitted a formal request for investigation, but the tribunal won't act until after the combat. They claim they cannot appear to show favoritism to a convicted criminal. Then it's still up to me to prove my innocence the hard way. Marcus managed a smile. At least now I know I'm fighting for more than just my life. Marcus. Celeste's voice broke slightly. I need you to know something. These past few days, investigating your case, I've realized that justice isn't just about following procedures. It's about fighting for what's right, even when the system fails us. You're risking everything by helping me. Some risks are worth taking. Her hand pressed against the barrier, and Marcus placed his palm opposite hers, separated by mere inches and the gulf between their species. Win, Marcus Vale. Win and come back to me. The words hung between them like a promise and a prayer. Marcus felt something shift inside his chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with physical attraction and everything to do with souls recognizing their match across the void. The arena's horn sounded, calling the combatants to battle. Marcus took one last look at Celeste's face, memorizing every detail, then turned toward his fate. The arena was a marvel of engineering, its crystalline walls rising toward the star-filled sky like a geode open to reveal its treasures. The floor was smooth stone, marked with the ancient symbols of ritual combat. In the center, two circles faced each other, waiting for the warriors who would determine justice through trial by arms. Vorthak was already present, and Marcus felt his blood chill at the sight of his opponent. The Krillian stood nearly 8 feet tall, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the arena lights. For arms ending in razor-sharp claws spoke of his species' predatory nature, while his compound eyes tracked every movement with insectal precision. Scars crisscrossed his carapace, testament to 17 previous victories. So, Vorthak's voice buzzed like an angry wasp, the soft skin thinks to dance with death. I will make your ending swift, human. You have shown courage in coming here. Marcus nodded respectfully. Whatever else might be said of Vorthak, the gladiator was an honorable warrior. I appreciate the courtesy. High Arbiter Zwaxthol's voice boomed across the arena as he began the ritual pronouncements. By ancient law and sacred tradition, we gather under the light of the triple moons to witness trial by combat. Let the guilty be punished and the innocent vindicated. Let justice flow like starlight across the void. The combatants took their positions in the marked circles. Marcus felt his heart hammering against his ribs, but his hands remained steady on his weapon. In the stands, he caught a glimpse of Celeste's luminous form, and drew strength from her presence. Begin. Zwaxthol commanded. Vorthak moved with surprising speed for his size, all 4 arms working in deadly coordination as he closed the distance between them. Marcus barely managed to deflect the first strike, the impact sending shock waves up his arms. He spun away from the follow-up attack, using his smaller size to stay mobile. The crowd roared as the warriors clashed, the sound of crystalline weapon meeting chitinous claw ringing across the arena. Marcus fell into the rhythm Thorn had drilled into him: dodge, strike, move, never stay in one place long enough for the Krillian's superior reach to trap him. But Vorthak was experienced, adapting quickly to Marcus's tactics. A sweeping blow caught Marcus across the ribs, sending him tumbling across the stone floor. Pain lanced through his side as he rolled to avoid the killing stroke that followed. You fight well for prey, Vorthak acknowledged, circling his wounded opponent. But this ends now. The Krillian charged, all 4 arms extended in a killing embrace. Marcus saw death approaching and made a desperate choice. Instead of dodging away, he rolled forward, sliding between Vorthak's legs and striking upward with his weapon's crystal point. The blade found the gap in the Krillian's armor at the base of his thorax. Vorthak screamed, a sound like tearing metal, and stumbled forward. But the wound, while painful, was not fatal. He spun with remarkable agility, one clawed hand raking across Marcus's shoulder and tearing through armor and flesh alike. Blood streamed down Marcus's arm, but he forced himself to focus. In the stands, he could see Celeste on her feet, her hands pressed to her mouth in horror. The sight of her fear for him sparked something primal in his chest. Thorn's words echoed in his memory, "You fight for love and truth. Which burns brighter?" Marcus felt the warrior's fire ignite within him. He was not just fighting for his own life, but for the future he might share with the remarkable woman who had chosen to believe in his innocence. For the first time since entering the arena, he went on the attack. Using techniques Thorn had drilled into him, Marcus began to systematically exploit Vorthak's wounds. The Krillian was stronger and more experienced, but he was also overconfident and increasingly desperate as his smaller opponent refused to die. Each exchange left the gladiator more frustrated, his attacks wilder and less controlled. The end came suddenly. Vorthak, enraged by a particularly stinging strike to his wounded thorax, lunged forward with all four arms extended. Marcus sidestepped at the last possible moment, using the Krillian's momentum against him. As Vorthak stumbled past, overextended and off balance, Marcus drove his weapon's point deep into the joint where the gladiator's neck met his torso. The crystalline blade found a gap in the exoskeleton and penetrated to the vital organs beneath. Vorthak convulsed once, then toppled forward like a felled tree, his life flowing out across the arena floor in streams of ichor. Silence fell over the arena like a curtain. Then, slowly, the crowd began to cheer, not for blood sport, but for justice done and courage rewarded. Marcus stood over his fallen opponent, his chest heaving with exhaustion and his arms streaming blood, but alive. "Victor!" High Arbiter Zwaxthul announced, his voice carrying wonder and perhaps a touch of respect. By combat and courage, Marcus Vale has proven his innocence before the law. Let all charges be dismissed and his freedom restored. As the arena erupted in celebration, Marcus looked up at the VIP section where Celeste sat. Even from a distance, he could see the tears streaming down her luminous face, tears of joy and relief. Their eyes met across the vast space, and in that moment, the barriers between species, between prosecutor and defendant, between duty and desire, crumbled like walls before an earthquake. Marcus had won more than his freedom in the arena that night. He had won the right to love and be loved, to build a future among the stars with the extraordinary woman who had chosen to believe in him when no one else would. But as the medics rushed forward to tend his wounds and the crowd continued its celebration, neither Marcus nor Celeste noticed the dark figures in the shadows, or the way certain tribunal members exchanged glances that spoke of plans within plans. His victory in the arena was only the beginning of their real fight. The blood on the arena floor had barely dried when the next chapter of their story began to unfold.